What's up? Welcome to Cohn and Krueger in our weekly Monday afternoon time slot. That's Larry Krueger. I'm Grant Cohn, and usually it's the time of year where you talk about nothing or next to nothing on the show. But Brandon Aiyuk gave us something. So first of all, I just want to say thank you, Brandon, for providing. Now I need to ask you what you made of it, because again, it's like it's not the most direct form of communication. He's on TikTok, which already isn't the most. I mean, kids watch TikTok. So it's Brandon Aiyuk talking to Jaden Daniels, the Commanders quarterback, saying, they don't want me back, I swear. How do you interpret all this?
It is interesting how he said that. He tells Jaden Daniels, they said they don't want me back, I swear. Well, I think what the Niners clearly want Aiyuk back. I think Lynch has stated that very clearly. But the Niners want Aiyuk back at their price or close to it. And when he came out today and said they don't want me back, I think really it's likely just a situation where the 49ers probably don't want him back if his number's 30 to 32 million or higher. And that's, so like there was it was a very simple statement, but I think it's a negotiation. The Niners want him back clearly at their price. And it sounds like, he says they don't want me back. I'm taking that as they don't want him back at his price.
Like they didn't show him the money. They weren't serious. They didn't produce the bag. They had unserious offers. That's sort of what they don't want me back could mean, because they've said on the record they want him back.
Lynch is, I mean, you can say whatever you want about Lynch. I think Lynch is a pretty honest guy. And when he says, hey, we'd like Aiyuk here long term, and we'd like, and I saw your stream this morning. You're like, yeah, I'd like to buy a house in San Francisco, but I don't want to pay more than $900,000.
That's what they're at.
Do you really want a house in San Francisco? Because if you really want a house in San Francisco, you're probably going to have to pay, $1.5 million or whatever the going rate is for the cheapest house in San Francisco, but it's well over $900,000. So, it's I don't want to say it's semantics, but I think there's a PR part of this. And I think the 49ers want to make sure that they win the negotiation. But if they don't win the negotiation, Grant, I think they want to make sure that they win the PR of the negotiation. And so Lynch saying, hey, we want him back. We absolutely want this guy here long term. Okay. But talk's cheap and actions determine the reality, of the situation. And you can, I want to buy a house in San Francisco, but I'm only offering $500,000. Well, guess what? You're not going to have a house in San Francisco. And then we look at that statement and say, well, he said he wanted to buy a house in San Francisco, but he was never really committed to it. The Niners say they want to have Aiyuk back, but the question is that we all need to ask is, are they committed to it?
Yeah, and when he says they don't want me back, either he's just sort of throwing a fit or trolling or, whatever it is, or he's insinuating that they're going to trade him, like something has changed and he's a distraction and they have Ricky Pearsall and they're happy with Ricky and they just feel like they don't need Brandon anywhere near this team. Like, forget the fifth-year option. That's almost what that sounds. We don't want you back. Like, go find a trade partner. We'll make it happen. We're done. I mean, it couldn't be like that.
The only thing that's consistent is that, and I always try to look for some consistencies to find the truth, right? Because there's so many people kind of spinning and this and that. But to me, what's interesting is that TJ Hushmanzada, who has a relationship with Aiyuk, went on 95.7 The Game and said, these two sides are not close and they're not getting closer. And then now you have the guy from ESPN, Jeremy Fowler, who I don't think has any relationship at all with TJ Hushmanzada as far as this is concerned. And he's basically saying the same thing. These two sides are not, they are not in agreement. They have no arrangement, and it doesn't look like it's getting closer to getting done. So in a way, we're hearing kind of the same thing from multiple parties, which makes me believe that there's probably some truth to it. That they probably the talks probably have stalled, and for Fowler to say there's not a lot of optimism that a deal will get done, a lot of Niner fans are pushing back, saying, "Hey, look, guys, this is no different than the Debo thing that was 2 years ago, and that deal got done in the 11th hour." Everybody relax. This deal will get done in the 11th hour. But, when Debo was here, there was no backup plan. Now they've drafted Pearsall. They've drafted Cowing. I don't know about you, but I felt like the one thing I took out of those OTAs was that Purdy to Pearsall is starting to become a little bit of a thing, and there's no question they're repping it on the field. So maybe the Niners feel like they've got even more leverage because they've got internal.
Yeah, it's possible. I think what's so interesting about the timing of all this is yesterday, Jeremy Fowler comes out with a report like, hey, there's no progress at all. Still no progress. Talks have stalled, and there's very little optimism that this gets done. Then the next day, Brandon Aiyuk comes out and sort of says it himself on TikTok in like this sort of staged, not live thing with his girlfriend filming it, saying, hey, they don't want me back. So it feels like you could interpret this as Aiyuk's camp getting impatient, trying to force the Niners' hand, saying, we want it now. Or this could just be it breaking down. Simple as that.
Or I think what we're seeing here is that Aiyuk's camp is very, very aware that they don't really have the leverage because of Pearsall, because of how many wide receivers there are in every draft, because of the supply and demand. There's so much. Is there a high demand for wide receivers? Yeah, but there's also an incredible supply. So I think they understand that there is no leverage. So they understand that the best way for them to establish or create leverage where there is none is to incite the fans to push back. And if you take it public like he has and are like, hey, this isn't getting done, maybe the fans side with you and with tremendous urgency kind of push back on the team and are like, hey, this is your number one wide receiver and you're inside your Super Bowl window and you're going to let this guy either hold out half the year or force a trade and all inside your Super Bowl window. What team does that? So I mean,
the leverage that Aiyuk has to me is like, why do the Niners want this drama? Like, why do you want this hanging over training camp and everything? I know they did it with Bosa, but it feels like with Bosa, it was never a question that it was going to get done. This is a huge question. Bosa was never making noises publicly that he was upset. Aiyuk is. So what
also,
do you gain?
To add to that, Grant, we also wasn't it Lynch who kind of either guaranteed or suggested to us way early in the process that if there were fines incurred by Bosa in the process of the deal getting done, that, I don't know if he said it as much or if he just implied it, but it was kind of implied, if I remember correctly, that he was never going to pay those fines. Well, Barrows pointed out to me the other day on the radio that the Niners did not make any statement or even imply that Aiyuk would not incur fines. And when Shanahan was asked why some guys show up to OTAs and other guys don't, he's like, well, some guys don't mind paying the fines. So there was no like, hey, we're going to absolve Aiyuk's fines the way we absolved Nick's fines last year. That has never been broached.
Well, Lynch last year said, we're not going to trade Bosa. The deal's going to get done. Don't worry about it. It's just a lot of money. Bear with us. Right. With Aiyuk, they're like, well, we don't know. We'd like to get it done, but the 5th-year option is an option, and we did explore trades. Like, none of that happened with Bosa last year. So, I mean, the leverage that Aiyuk has is like, do you want drama and distractions this year, or do you want like a focused team with one goal to win the Super Bowl? Because if that's what you want, then extend me now or trade me now, because I'm just going to be a malcontent and that you created. So that's the leverage he has, I guess, unless the Niners don't care about that.
No, I think the Niners do care about that. I think that's what I'm saying. There's a PR element of this, right? That I think the 49ers really want to get Aiyuk signed, but I think what they're committed to is trying to win the PR side of this.
Right.
So let's make our fans feel, if we move this guy, that we did everything in our power and he just wanted too much. And you see the comments in the tweets about this. There's lots of 49er fans who are in that camp. They're very pro Niner, and they're like, you know what? 26 million's a lot of money, man. I mean, it's like, okay. And now we're judging Brandon Aiyuk out of our own pocket
Right.
Because 26 million is a lot to Larry Krueger. Now that's what
Yeah.
Brandon Aiyuk should play for, should play for, and not the going rate of, I don't know, guys in his shoes that produce the way he produces. But there's a lot of fans who are like, man, 26 million, send him packing. So the Niners, I would say they're winning the PR battle to a degree, and maybe that's what this whole thing was today by Brandon, was to try to at least beat him in the PR battle.
Are the Niners winning in the PR battle? Like, I know there are some Niner fans that think that Brandon's being selfish or whatever, but I think most football fans understand that the market's exploding and that Brandon was a second-team All-Pro and that A.J. Brown was a second-team All-Pro this year, and he just got a 3-year extension worth $96 million. That's $32 million a year, and he's not way better than Aiyuk. In fact, they're pretty close to each other. So I think if you were his agent, you would settle for no less than $30 million, and you'd probably fight for 32. So it's just business. And the fact that the Niners are trying to get Aiyuk to make an exception for them is unrealistic. What are you doing, dude? You either pay him what he's worth or you trade him. There's no third option that the Niners are trying to create. Although they are. There's a third option. It's make him play on the 5th-year option and then franchise him next year and maybe trade him next year, or really, really stick it to him like that. Let's do a thought experiment. That's what they do. Yeah. There's no extension. He plays on the 5th-year option. Maybe he holds out, but eventually he shows up. And how does Kyle Shanahan call the plays? Is he giving him extra targets to keep him happy? Or is he giving him less targets to make him more affordable in the offseason? Like, how does that work?
Exactly. We're talking about a receiver who potentially wants $10 million for every reception that he had in the playoffs. He had 3 receptions in the Super Bowl, 3 in the NFC title game, I think 3 in the playoff game before that, and he wants $30 million. So, yeah, and that's a great question because, Shanahan, you could argue that the one of the main arguments for not paying Brandon Aiyuk is the Niners' usage of Brandon Aiyuk. Mm-hmm. So then if he comes back and plays on the 5th-year option, they very much could control his usage. I watching Pearsall in practice, I think there's a really good chance that Pearsall gets a lot of targets. But then my friends who, are a little bit more dialed in on the targets are like, Krug, so you're saying a 4th option is going to get more targets this year than what JJ got last year, which was a super low number. So like if Pearsall does get, and my notion is that Pearsall's probably going to get more targets than you think. Well, if Pearsall gets more targets than you think, and he's the 4th option, then there's a chance that Brandon Aiyuk's targets are kind of muted or
gonna decrease.
Right.
Absolutely. So what if Aiyuk goes from getting 105 targets last year to 90?
Right.
85.
And then all of a sudden they don't want to pay him because
and then he's a free agent. Like what if there's a game where he has 3 targets, 4 targets? How's he going to act if he got paid? He might be like, you know what? They took care of me. I'm a team player. I'm going to go out there and block my ass off. It doesn't matter. But they didn't take care of me and they're not getting me the ball and I'm freaking pissed about it. Like that's the kind of thing that can tear a team apart if they lose, if they're not running the table. I don't see why you would want to bring that into your locker room. It seems awful.
It seems like you could be introducing something that would be such a terrible topic to get into and one that you don't want any part of.
And also it's like if Kyle's just going to call a bunch of passes for Aiyuk to keep him happy, is that in the best interest of the team? It's not how they play.
Yeah. And that's now we're not trying to win games. We're trying to manipulate stats for contractual, satisfaction here or there, or manipulation.
Or keep a disgruntled wide receiver happy because we couldn't take care of him financially. Like,
right. So we'll we're not going to pay him. We're going to force him to play on the 5th-year option, but then we're going to sit there and try to help him out next year by
giving him a lot of passes so then we can trade him for more. But really that takes me out of my rhythm as a play caller because I'm better when I'm just giving the ball to McCaffrey. But
yeah,
it just seems like it's all wrong.
Well, and then you also got to kind of wonder too. I don't want to, claim that the nefarious things are going on, but I would love to hear the Niners or somebody with the Niners, Kyle, John, Parag, anybody, Jed, anybody with the Niners, Guido, somebody come out and explain to me the strategy of making Aiyuk, or waiting to pay Aiyuk. Because the Niners are they waiting because they want to wait? Because they've got the ultimate hammer over him as far as the 5th-year option and the tags? Or are they trying to get a deal done and he's making them wait because he wanted to see where the market went, knowing that it was only going up? I mean,
the fact that they wait, but the fact that it took so long with Bosa and Debo and Kittle makes people feel like this is how the Niners do business.
Right. But also I kind of wonder if you don't want to pay him crazy money, and the Niners knew that Jefferson, there were articles written 6 months ago that Jefferson was going to get $35 million per year. And it came out by Ian Rappaport after the combine that Aiyuk's camp wanted to wait until all the wide receivers in this cycle had been taken care of before he addressed his contract. So he wanted to wait for the market to reset itself multiple times, and it has, and it's gone up. But it makes you wonder what's the wisdom on the Niner front in waiting. If they wanted they want to pay $26 million, as Silver's indicated that they've offered. Why didn't they get aggressive and try to get that deal signed when the $26 million was the going rate? Why wait until
year?
Yeah, last year. Why wait until the 11th hour and the going rate's quite a bit over that, and then, kind of get played? Are we supposed to believe that the 49ers strategy that they utilize with Bosa and Debo, and that they appear to be utilizing here with Aiyuk, of kind of waiting to the 11th hour, is that just burning them this time around, and they were unaware of it? That doesn't seem likely.
You're starting to see teams smarten up and extend wide receivers and quarterbacks after 3 years instead of 4 first-round picks, like Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Nico Collins, all extended this offseason. Forget Nico Collins. Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith were first-round picks. So if the Niners had them, they wouldn't have extended them. But Philly and Miami did. So that, to me, is the smart play, because if they were to wait to next year, then those two would have gotten even more expensive just because the cap's going up and the market's exploding. So the Niners, if they were smart, they could have offered Brandon Aiyuk $25 million last year. He probably would have accepted it. Now, a second team All-Pro season later, and the market exploding, and the Niners are like stuck in 2023, trying to offer 2023 prices. It doesn't work.
I'd also love to know what the Niners' internal analytical division of people feel about this, because I'm starting to see the picture clarify itself as far as the league's concerned. For years, nobody wanted to pay. For years, running backs went really high. Eric Dickerson was the second pick in the draft. Now it's like running backs are never going in the first round, and they've been completely devalued. Well, we're starting to see that with receivers. The receiver market's gotten way out of hand. I went and looked up this morning the top 25 paid receivers in the NFL. And of the top 25 paid receivers in the NFL, at least the list that I saw, there might be a couple of guys, there could be a newer list, but I think this was a pretty recent list. Of the top 25 wide receivers, guess how many of the top 25 wide receivers won a Super Bowl, after they got paid, while they're making monster bucks?
4.
That's exactly right. 4. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin with Tampa when they beat KC, Cooper Kupp with the Rams, and then Tyreek Hill. It's actually technically 3, because Hill wasn't paid and really broke.
Hill was not making big bucks when he won.
Yeah, he was not making big bucks, but he eventually got paid big bucks. But you're right. It's actually 3. It's Evans, Godwin, and Kupp, and eventually Hill, got paid, but he technically won a Super Bowl. But the rest of these guys, Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra, Waddle, Adams, Metcalf, Debo, Ridley, Scary Terry McLaurin, Diggs, Higgins, none of these guys have won. So I'm kind of wondering if the analytic people that the Niners seem like have more of a say in their drafting and in their player acquisitions are looking at the wide receivers and just going, you know what? With as many top-tier players as we have, and with a quarterback that may cost us $60 million, we can't afford Brandon Aiyuk. And so let's just let this thing, he wants to let it play out so he gets top dollar. I guess we'll just go along with that, and then we'll make a dramatic move at the end. I mean, unless, I don't know about you, I don't see the Niners bridging this gap and signing him before, and they got 6 weeks to do it before camp starts. And I guess there's some date he has to come in by, right, to not waste the year. So I don't know if that's week 4 or 8, 6. I don't know where that is, but
there's a couple directions the Niners could have went with this. They could have said, Brandon, you're irreplaceable. We're going to get this done early in the offseason. Here's $30 million a year. You're so irreplaceable to us. Or, man, wide receivers are a dime a dozen. You're good, but there's a lot of good wide receivers every year in the draft. We're going to draft one. They drafted 2, one in the first round. I think they've made it really clear where they stand. Like, they want Brandon Aiyuk at their price, and they, for some reason, think Brandon Aiyuk is going to meet them at their price. I guarantee he won't. And eventually they're going to figure out, like, this isn't going to get done. Maybe they figured that out this week. And maybe a trade will happen now that they have seen Ricky Pearsall in person and like him. So my question to you is, do you think it's a coincidence that these Brandon Aiyuk staged social media events have often included Jaden Daniels today? And then before the draft, there was something where he said, it was on Instagram, in 6 days, it's going to be fireworks. Maybe Aiyuk thought he was going to get traded on the draft night. Washington has Adam Peters.
Right.
A lot of times teams like to surround a young quarterback with a wide receiver he went to college with. So there's some chemistry. And
Washington is a unique situation because I know a lot of people would look at them and say, rookie head coach, rookie general manager. They're like the Niners were when Shanahan and Lynch took over. But I think that's a misread on that situation. They signed 20 veteran free agents. That's got to be the record for this offseason. That's got to be the most. And I was told from a buddy I know who knows Bob Myers well that, Myers was brought there to set the football thing, get the football thing going. So he brings in Peters from UCLA. They've got Quinn to be the head coach. They want to turn it around as fast as possible, start winning games, start building momentum, putting butts in the seats so they can try to get a new stadium there in Maryland built in the next, 5 to 10 years. But they're not in your typical 5-year plan. Hey, let's just show, let's try to get to 500 this year. No. They're in an absolute sprint to try to be, regain relevance, regain, the fan base that's been just dormant since Dan Schneider bought it. And they're trying to jumpstart an iconic franchise and get a new stadium built and up the value of that franchise by $500 million. I mean, they're thinking big and they're aggressive. So while Aiyuk might seem like a overly aggressive move for a first-year regime, don't look at them as a first-year regime. They're in a sprint to build the thing up. So they may view Aiyuk as a necessity.
Yeah,
so
they can afford him. They don't have a quarterback on a rookie deal. They're like best friends. I mean, what about the Niners trade Aiyuk to Washington? You could ask for their first-round pick, but I still don't think a pick next year gets it done. This is a team that needs to win the Super Bowl this year. So how about trade Aiyuk for Terry McLaurin? They're similar. McLaurin's about 2-3 years older. His base salary the next 2 years is $15 million, which is right in the Niners price range. What do you think?
They got 3 receivers that are really interesting there. McLaurin, because he's a true number 1, and he would give the Niners a replacement that's signed and ready and this and that. Jahan Dotson's really interesting. He had a really good game against the Niners at Levi's a year or 2 ago. Penn State rookie in the 2022 draft, former first-round pick, great ball skills. And then the third guy that's really interesting is Luke McCaffrey. What if they said, we'll give you Luke McCaffrey in a number 1? Or what if they said, we'll give you Terry McLaurin in a 3rd, or Jahan Dotson in a 2, or
McLaurin in a 3rd? Yes,
1.
Please. Thank you very much. I'll take that. To me, it's perfect. I mean, he's not too old. He's signed for the next 2 years. He'd be affordable enough for the 49ers, and he replaces all of Aiyuk's production, about like 75 catches a year, about 5-6 touchdowns a year. Terry McLaurin can do that. He's every bit as athletic as Aiyuk, and he wouldn't complain about his role in the offense.
No, I think McLaurin would be ideal. I mean, he would be ideal. Luke would be, a popular thing, obviously, with Christian.
For sure.
Have
them both.
Dotson's interesting because he's another receiver that has great ball skills. The other question is, there's a lot of talk that the Commanders are shopping or will shop or have shopped Jonathan Allen from their defensive line. And we know how the Niners are about defensive line. And we can talk more about that. But would you take Jonathan Allen in one of those receivers and no pick?
Jonathan Allen is interesting because he's, to me, like legitimately better than Hargrave and Collins. Hargrave and Collins, I have questions about those two. I mean, can either one stop the run? I want to know. Jonathan Allen can stop the run.
Especially Hargrave. I mean, Hargrave. Hargrave, we all jumped up and down and clapped like, we were trained animals when they signed Hargrave. But you know what? That move sucked. That was an awful move.
It was bad.
He played terrible, and it forced them to get rid of Ebukam, Azeez Al-Shaair, Hassan Ridgeway, Jimmy Ward, Emmanuel Mosley. I mean, they probably lost.
I got another one for you.
Good run defenders.
I got another one for you. Is Eric Armstead.
Armstead, yeah.
Armstead too. A year later, I think they had to choose between them, and they had to get rid of Armstead because they could.
You broke up your team for Hargrave, and then Hargrave was just he's not a good run defender. He never has been a good run defender. But he showed up and he wasn't in great shape. And I mean, talk about a guy who, I mean, that's one of those, if you just look at the name, you say, oh, the Niners signed Javon Hargrave. You know how many people that day were like, it's going to be unfair for offensive lines to have to block Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave. Well, I mean, Javon Hargrave was totally mediocre at best. I mean, maybe had maybe 2 games, a game and a half of good production. The rest of it, he was a total liability.
Look, if I were the Niners general manager, I would rather have 2 years of Terry McLaurin for $15 million a year than 3, 4, 5 years of Brandon Aiyuk for $31 million a year. Like that's a no-brainer to me. So if that's what Brandon wants, let Washington pay him and make that trade. Terry McLaurin's a hell of a player. He's never played with a good quarterback. Put him in this offense with Brock. I bet if you put Terry in this offense and Aiyuk in that offense, McLaurin might have better numbers.
Oh, he would.
For half the price.
I mean, Ayuk's great. He's a second-team All-Pro. He's a true number 1 receiver. He does a bunch of things that the Niners should love, right? He blocks downfield and
great route runner, tough.
Great route runner. You never feel like he's getting shut down. You just feel like they go in other directions.
Can beat the press.
He can
line up inside, can line up outside, for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot to like about Aiyuk.
But so can Terry.
But it's supply and demand.
Yeah.
And if you lose Brock Purdy, you might wait 25 more years to find a franchise quarterback. You get rid of Brandon Aiyuk, you'll be able to replace Brandon Aiyuk within a year, 2 years.
Yeah, his skill set seems super rare, but then his production isn't. And when you're paying him $31 million a year and he's still giving you 70 catches and 6 touchdowns, and you look around the league and see all the other wide receivers who produce that for half the price, you're going to kick yourself. I mean, even with Bosa, everyone says, oh, great trade. I mean, great deal. Great contract. Yeah, he gave him 10.5 sacks last year. So Leonard Floyd did the same thing for like a third of the price. When you give a player that kind of money, they really have to produce every year. You can't have a down year at that price point because it hurts the team.
Well, and also, I mean, look at it this way too. With what the Niners are going to pay Brock Purdy, if they're either going to take a back step and not be as good, or they're going to have to get really equal production out of some player who's making a whole lot less than the player they're replacing.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like, and what position are you, could you potentially get somebody who, could produce at a great level and not make as much? It's probably wide receiver. So I think there's a very good chance, we debated, is it Debo or is it Aiyuk? When you look at what Brock's going to actually get paid, it might be Debo and Aiyuk that both have to go.
Yeah.
So maybe this whole thing, maybe the Niners, as the Aiyuk quarterback markets or as the Purdy quarterback markets exploded, they might be looking at this and they may have changed their their whole thinking on Aiyuk from we need him at our price to we can't really afford him at anybody's price.
No. And to your point, spending huge money on wide receivers hasn't really produced Super Bowl championships for anyone. So maybe it's not the move. Let's make some sleeper picks. Game 5 is in an hour.
Celtics.
I want to get some action in. Let's do
Celtics it. going for the knockout blow against Dallas. I think it's Celtics -6. Is that what it is? What does the line say?
I don't. These are just. We're just going to do some picks here. Does it say? I don't know.
Let me see.
What do you think about Luka though? Luka, 31.5 points. He's been hovering right around that number all series. We could do rebounds. We could do assists. What do you feel confident about?
With Luka specifically?
Luka. Yeah.
I would say under 31. I just think Boston's going to fire, and they're going to try to make anybody but Luka beat them.
Okay, how about Tatum? Tatum for points. He's at 26.5. He had 15 last game.
Yeah, I'd probably go under. They are, okay. The other little inside knowledge thing to know on these over-unders and do you go higher or lower? The vast majority of the gamblers like to go higher. So the smart money's generally on going lower.
Good to know. Jaylen Brown, points 24.5. We got 79.5% of the money going on the more.
Yeah, I like that one too. I think Jaylen Brown, because not only is the championship on the line, the MVP is on the line. I don't think right now it's definitive who's going to get the MVP. Some people think Luka might get the MVP in defeat. So I think Jaylen Brown has the best chance of getting the MVP for Boston if he has a big game tonight.
Okay, what about Kyrie Irving? 23.5 points.
I love that over. I think Kyrie's going to be a major player tonight.
Has to be.
Dallas is going to bring everything. Because the bottom line on this one, if Dallas gets this win, then they go back home for game 6. If Dallas wins tonight, they got a great chance to force this thing to 7. If this thing goes to 7, Boston could gag. I mean, there'll be tons and tons of pressure on the Celtics if this thing gets to a game 7.
Okay, last one, Drew Holiday. 12.5 points for Drew.
Over. Love Drew Holiday. Huge player, huge winner. Drew Holiday is like a money player.
I love that he got traded to Boston. I feel like it really put him on the national stage, and it sort of validates his entire career because he was playing for obscure teams. He was in Giannis's shadow, and now he'll go down as like the winning piece that Boston needed. It's really cool.
Very underrated.
UCLA
player.
Bruin.
Yeah. And his brother, he's got 2 brothers. His brother, Justin, played for the Warriors. He's got another brother, Aaron, who played, but Drew's the best of the Holiday brothers for sure. And he's a great on-ball defender. He's one of the best on-ball
defenders I've ever seen.
Yeah. Very underrated player. Like
I was there at UCLA when he was there. I was 2 years older. He replaced Russell Westbrook. And at the time, he only stayed 1 year. He's not Russell Westbrook on offense. He's not looking for his own shot that much. So people didn't understand how good he was, but he is a better pro than Russell Westbrook was. And I know Russell Westbrook won an MVP, but this guy is a winning player in a way that Westbrook never was.
Westbrook averaged a triple-double 1 year. So, I mean, he's pretty special. I remember Westbrook at
but
UCLA.
Not a champion.
Yeah, UCLA, Westbrook was a wing. It's funny. He didn't have the ball in his hands.
Darren Collison had the one. It was the one.
He ran the floor, and he was a wing who filled the lane. In the pros, he's been on the ball the whole time. It's funny that he's like had 2 different whole careers.
All right, I'm locking my entry in, but I'm going to do the combo because I'm going to try to get at least something correct, which means if there's 4 right or 3 right, I still win something. So that's my entry if you're trying to copy it and win some money. Promo code Cohn. There's a QR code. It's very technological, and it's a $100 deposit match on your first deposit. So that's that.
There you go. Good luck to all of you.
Good luck to all of you. We just gave you the answers. Let's do something other than Aiyuk.
Is
We were
what?
talking about Javon Hargrave earlier. The Niners just gave him a ton of money because they decided a few years ago that as long as they have the most expensive defensive line, they'll be good. I feel like the trend's going the other direction in the NFL now. What do you think? The state of the D line.
Well, I mean, okay, so this is a trend that you know is that's been defining characteristic of the 49ers for multiple regimes. I mean, going back to Pierce Holt, Kevin Fagan, Michael Carter, Dennis Brown, Ted Washington. Going back to multiple regimes, the Niners have always believed strongly in a strong defensive line. But God, man, the last decade watching some of these quarterbacks take a 3-step drop, or not even a 3-step drop, and the ball's coming out. I mean, if you want to, you can neutralize a really, really dominant rush by just getting the ball out really fast.
Mhm.
So, and we've seen Breeze do it. We've seen Mahomes do it. We've seen, we've
Purdy
seen a
do
lot
it.
of quarterbacks do it. Brady, where you
Purdy.
can't sack the quarterback anymore because you can never really get to him, because it's kind of like the Chiefs and the Ravens in the AFC title game. The thing about Baltimore is that you can't sack Lamar, not because he's so fast, it's because he never takes a deep drop. They're just, everything's coming out quick, short passes, runs, quarterback runs. And so he's taking like 3 7-step drops the entire game. He's taking like 3 5-step drops the entire game. So then it's hard to sack the quarterback when they don't take a 5 or 7-step drop and give you an opportunity. So
Also,
I
the
kind of
big
wonder if that's
trend in
the
the
way to go.
NFL, the big trend in the NFL right now is simulated pressure, which is
Right.
you have 7 or 8 pass rushing threats around the line of scrimmage on any given play. You're only going to rush 4, but the offense doesn't know who's rushing and who's dropping. And a lot of times with Baltimore last year, they would drop their nose tackle into coverage just because the offense wouldn't be expecting it. So you don't have to have Nick Bosa and a defensive tackle making $21 million a year and a defensive tackle making $18 million a year and Chase Young. You can have washed up Jadeveon Clowney and revive his career because you have all these. You're scheming up the pressure. You're not just asking 4 guys to win their one-on-ones.
And you're seeing players who play non-pass rush positions who are, all they do is rush the passer. So like Devin White of Tampa Bay, he's an inside linebacker, but all he does is, delayed blitzes and he gets home. Jamal Adams, he's a safety, a strong safety. Maybe he's a weak side linebacker. All he does is shoot the gaps and blitz the quarterback, and he's really a pass rusher. And if you look at the numbers of sacks in the NFL every year, every year for like the last 5 or 6 years, the number of sacks that are coming from defensive linemen, tackles or ends, goes down, and the percentage of sacks that are coming from, defensive backs or linebackers go up. So it's just, you're right. Now it's like they're going to rush 4, but what 4? And can you figure out which 4 are coming and who's dropping and which direction to slide your line? And, the coordination of your protection is huge now, because guys, they're gonna rush 2 linemen and 2 linebackers, and next play they're gonna rush a corner and 3 D linemen. And it's like you got to be able to figure out who's coming from where, what angles, and what time.
Right. And so you can scheme up the pressure on the one hand, and 2, offenses are really leaning on the quick passing game more than ever. So what is the upside in over-investing in the defensive line? It seems like if that's the trend in the NFL right now, that what you want to do is invest in your back 7, not your front 7, because your pass rush is almost like Mike McDonald is going to be in charge of that. It's going to be as effective as he is creative in Seattle. The pass rush was winning in the Super Bowl for Kansas City because Spagnuolo was out coaching Kyle, not because George Karlaftis was taking Colton McKivitz to the shed. It wasn't like that. I mean, now Chris Jones was dominating, but other than that, it was a lot of schemed up pressure. And, the Niners can call as many 5 wide quick passes as they want to try to get away from that. But that's the game now. So you need great DBs, 5 of them, and 2 really good linebackers who can cover.
Right. And I mean, And it was like, that's kind of one of the reasons I'm sure the Niners were so attracted to Hargrave, because they looked around and said, well, you know what? Run stuffers are kind of, we, especially in this wide 9 get up the field, we want 4 D-line pass rushers, because we saw the Eagles a couple years ago win the Super Bowl with basically every guy in their line could rush the passer. And now it's like, you see it, like when the Niners played Dallas and they had Jonathan Hankins, whoever was blocking Hankins would just drop inside and combo block somebody else and just kind of let him go because he was so not going to rush the quarterback. So now those days of having that 2-gapper monster run defender who's just a gigantic wide body who can't run at all, that guy almost doesn't really have a role anymore. It's like if you put that guy out there, they're just going to let that guy go by himself and take the center who's going to block him and just have him combo block somebody else.
Yeah, it feels like the Niners signed Javon Hargrave because they wanted to get back to what their defense was. You just kind of like set it and forget it. You 4 guys rush straight and win, but that's not where the league is going anymore. I bet they would undo that signing if they could. I mean, right now it should be it'd be Nick Bosa, and they really shouldn't be spending very much for any other defensive lineman. They should treat that D line like they treat the O line, and have cost effective people on it.
I think this is it for Hargrave. I think he'll play this year, and then he'll be done.
I agree.
This will be his final year, so we'll see. I mean, he's talked about being in better shape. I mean, my God, you're getting paid a king's ransom. You couldn't get in shape, but he's.
I feel for Steve Wilkes. I'm sure Steve Wilkes is somewhere fishing, being like, man, freaking Javon Hargrave wasn't in shape, and Nick Bosa wasn't there for the offseason. They blamed me.
Chase Young played 3/4 speed, and so did Givens. And
they gave me Chase Young. He's a dog. Like what was I supposed to do? Yeah, and we were third in points given up.
And they got rid of 6 of our best run defenders, and then blamed me because we couldn't stop the run.
I'd be mad. I'd be salty. But
I will say this one thing about Wilkes is, I think when I've talked to Kasarik 2 years ago, that Kasarik dialed up the games up front. And when I asked Wilkes about it last year, he's like, no, I dial up all the games up front. And I thought the games that they played up front this year were not nearly as effective. So maybe that was not a strength of his game as a coordinator. I don't know. But I mean, I couldn't help but notice that it didn't seem like when they played stunting games this year that it was nearly as effective as it was in the past.
I agree. Sven says, if anyone believes the Brandon Aiyuk rumors, I have beachfront property to sell you in Phoenix. Well, what are the rumors? We're talking about Brandon Aiyuk's TikTok, the one he posted himself today. I don't know what the rumors are, Sven.
There are no rumors. I mean, there was Bleacher Report putting out 4 sample trades. And I guess you could call those rumors, but those aren't rumors. Those are just like, hey, this guy's holding out, and here are some teams that need a wide receiver, and let's create a deal. Those aren't sourced rumors from reports. Those are just a writer for Bleacher Report, making stuff up. So
David E says no sympathy for Aiyuk at all. He plays for $14 million or he sits. That's fine. If he doesn't play well, he won't get paid next year either.
Which is, that sounds good, right? But it's a players' league. And the other thing is, then what about, does he hold out? And then if he holds out, does he get fined? And do the 49ers absolve those fines, or do they force him to pay those fines? And if they force him to pay those fines, are there a bunch of guys going, well, wait a second, why did Bosa not have to pay those fines, but Aiyuk does? So yeah. I don't know. I think the 49ers are more concerned about how the fan base reacts and how the locker room reacts. I think if you gave Lynch truth serum, he'd rather build a team without Aiyuk than try to build a team with him, just based on what he's going to get paid.
Also, I don't think this is a question of sympathy. This is business, period. I'm not emotionally invested in either side. These are very rich people, and I'm not involved. I just feel like Brandon isn't wrong for asking for what he wants. It's the market. And the Niners seem to be a little disconnected from the reality of the situation. Maybe I'm wrong. That's my interpretation.
or maybe they feel like he should want to take less to be here because they're a winning outfit. But the reality is that guys want to, especially in the NFL and in wide receivers, if you look at the history of it, they don't get a second big deal. So if you're a wide receiver, you get your rookie deal, then you get your one big deal, and then you might get a lesser deal. But this is the deal that is going to have to, whatever the Aiyuk family's living on, for the next 20, 25 years, a lot of it's coming from the money in this deal. So he's got to be a little bit of a warrior for his family here as well. And I'm sure he feels that pressure.
Also, like from Aiyuk's perspective, and you brought this up earlier, what is the urgency on his part to get a deal done? Every month he waits, the wide receiver market gets even better in his favor. I mean, it's like owning a house in San Francisco and feeling like the property values are skyrocketing. Like, I could sell this in 6 months and get another $100,000. I could sell this next year and get another 500,000. Like, what if I get a great offer now, I'll sell it, but I'm really in no rush now. It's a seller's market.
Except for your body. Like, I'm sure there's a Lloyd's of London insurance policy on his body, and I'm sure there's some nice payout there. But if you can sign for the big deal with the, what did Jefferson get for guaranteed money? 80 mil, 85 mil, 88 mil. So it's that guarantee. I mean, you guys were talking about this on a stream earlier today. We're all focused on the AAV, and Ryan brought up a good point that it's the number we should probably be focused on is the real number, which is the guaranteed number. And maybe
look, AJ Brown got 3 years, 96
million apart on the guaranteed number.
That's true. AJ Brown got 3 years, 96 with 50 million guaranteed. Like, that seems to be roughly what Aiyuk is going to get from some team. The Niners or another team. That's it. I don't know. There's not much. It seems like it's such a defined market. What's the problem?
I think it could be a $75 million guarantee. Didn't Amon-Ra get something like that?
No, I think Amon-Ra got 34 something guaranteed. I think
somebody got 76 guaranteed. I saw, and somebody suggested that maybe Aiyuk might be in that camp.
Okay,
but
perhaps.
But it's, I mean, that is, you say, what's the impetus for Aiyuk to get it done? Is just to have that guaranteed money.
That is true. Fish and Chips in the first round of the Content Creators 2024 draft. Fish and Chips selects Grant Cohn, UCLA, retained for another year, proven performer, raises game in 24. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's a lot of pressure, but I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna take it one day at a time.
5 pounds too, right? Is that
be the first one in, last one out? This pounds. That's true. Beatman Petey Boy says, I'd hate to part ways with him for real, but as a realist, he's being long-eyed. Either way, you, crew, coach, and the team keep me rocking at work. Shout out to y'all from the Hate or Debate team. Fernando, the Hate or Debate team. I like that.
Well, we're glad we can help you get through this.
Yeah. Well,
and
look,
by the
we
way,
talked about
there's a lot of people who are saying, like, why are you guys always talking Aiyuk? We're just talking Niners. And the Aiyuk story is front and center because of some stories that broke in the last 24 hours. Otherwise, June 17th, we'd be talking about something else.
I mean, no, usually in the offseason in June, we're talking about some type of business matter with football. In the last few years, it was like, are they going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo? Why is he still on the team? Why is Trey still on the team? Do they believe in him? Are they going to sign Bosa? Are they going to sign Debo? There's always some type of drama in June. And I think what some Niner fans feel is, like, I'm not falling for the okie doke again. There's always drama, and then it works out, and you forget about it by week 3. But this year feels different. It just feels different. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I totally agree with you on this one. It feels different. It feels different. And you know why it feels different is because it feels like there's every time this thing gets quiet and you think like, oh, there's nothing to talk about. It seems like the Aiyuk camp nudges this thing forward. Like, they know that they don't really have the leverage because they don't, there's limits to what he can do to secure the new deal. But if somehow Niner fans got worked up and that could add to their leverage, and so maybe that's kind of what Aiyuk and his camp are thinking. Let's keep talking about this. Let's keep the social media dialogue going on this, because really, we don't have a lot of leverage. And the only real leverage we have is that maybe Niner fans will rise up and put a little pressure on Lynch or Shanahan to up their offer.
What this feels like to me is more like the Buckner thing, but in the sense that it seems like the two sides are just fundamentally apart. With Buckner, it was the Niners didn't want to pay him $20 million a year, and Buckner wouldn't settle for anything less. And I think that was a sticking point. Now with Aiyuk, it seems like $30 million is the number, and it's like a matter of principle on both sides. I'm not going to go that high. I'm not going to go that low. But with Buckner, the Niners were very bold in trading him, and it blew up in their faces. And maybe they're afraid of that happening again, because that was a trade that John Lynch lost. Big
No
time.
doubt.
He lost. And he doesn't like to lose trades. He never traded Jimmy. He probably should have, but it seemed like he was so afraid of losing the trade. He kept asking for a first-round pick when his value was probably a fifth or something. So I don't know.
Yeah, he definitely lost the Buckner trade.
Mm-hmm.
But there was two decisions. It was Buckner versus Armstead, and then it was Kinlaw versus whatever options they had in the draft. And to me, they made a huge mistake by going with Kinlaw, just from the standpoint of you had a defensive tackle that commanded double teams and was a real force, and you just were so rigid in the way you went about it that like you had to trade for a pick and immediately turn that into a replacement defensive tackle. And then it was like, okay, but now you're taking the guy who proven pass rusher for another guy in the draft, and the guy had knee problems and wasn't a pass rusher, and then they got compared to each other. So that was a real lose situation comparing Kinlaw to Buckner. But they obviously went with the local. They wanted Armstead. Armstead was more willing to play ball with them. They went 2 for 1, right? It was like Jimmy Ward and Armstead as opposed to Buckner. But once again, that broke the one rule that I have, which is you never trade guys on your defensive front seven who command double teams, because it's so rare to get a guy like that. And that's exactly what they did. Buckner commanded consistent double teams, and they moved him.
Yeah, I bet they wish they just had him right now.
Oh,
Ricky
yeah.
is the white Robbie Anderson, says Rafael Flores. Random.
I think he's probably a little bit better than Robbie Anderson, but
Robbie Anderson.
He's from the Jets. I think he changed his name. I don't think his name's Robbie Anderson anymore. I think it's something else.
No, he has is it Meta World Peace?
Yeah, exactly. It's Cassius Clay. I think his name's now Cassius. He renamed himself Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what his actual name is, but that's his old name. Robbie Anderson's his old name. But I mean, I'll say this about Pearsall. Pearsall looks really good. And there's nothing not to like about Pearsall in practice. But there's this big part about playing that in the middle of the field, and that is you get destroyed. And I was watching the Football Life the other day on Julian Edelman, and his toughness probably came to light like 10 times in that video. And so all these people were like, oh, he's Julian Edelman. Let's be careful before we start comparing Pearsall to one of the toughest receivers the league's seen. If
that's why I like the idea.
That's great, but I don't know that he is.
That's why I like the idea of trading Aiyuk for McLaurin, because that doesn't put pressure on Pearsall. Like Pearsall, you can still be a rookie. You can still take a couple of years to come into your own if that's what it takes. They got McLaurin, or you have both of them. Now your wide receiver room isn't taking a giant step back. I came up with that idea. I like that trade. I think it's money.
I love McLaurin. I'd take Jonathan Allen. I would take McLaurin. Yep. I like Dotson. I would even take McCaffrey's brother if I could get a high enough pick. I'd take Luke McCaffrey and a first round pick from the Commanders and take my chances. But I just think that at some point, there's so many weird scenarios going on here, because the Niners set themselves up to wait, and yet you get the feeling that they don't want to pay the top price, and yet waiting guarantees you're going to pay the top price. So it makes me think that either they really don't want Aiyuk, and this is all a bunch of talk about, they're going to move off of him in the 11th hour, or otherwise, why did you allow this market? You got played by this market and how you dealt with this market instead of being aggressive and jumping it early and paying him maybe $26 million.
I mean, Howie Roseman got an extension done with Devontae Smith and with AJ Brown this year. Trent Baalke got an extension done with Trevor Lawrence this year. The Niners would have waited. So the Niners are starting to, even though they have the best roster and they've been in the Super Bowl, like if they start to fall back, people are going to look at this offseason as a moment when it's like, hold on, like you lost Brandon Aiyuk when you could have extended him in 2023. You waited around, the wide receiver market blew up and you traded him. Why? This was preventable. That's your fault. You could have signed him last year. You had no foresight on the matter. Other teams seem to be looking ahead and saying, no, we got to do this right now. This market is getting crazy. We want top level wide receivers, so we got to pay now. Waiting doesn't help us.
Also, kind of makes you wonder, what if they move off of Brandon Aiyuk and Purdy regresses dramatically without Aiyuk?
Now, be good to know before paying Purdy.
Yeah, but I mean,
or then you just sunk your team. You screwed up.
Yeah. Or, I mean, then now you're staring at paying your quarterback $60 million when he didn't look nearly as good this year without Aiyuk as he did with Aiyuk. Yeah. So, I mean, there's all kinds of, ramifications to mishandling this negotiation. And I do kind of feel like they've mishandled it. It does feel like there seems to be more bad blood here. It seems to be more like these two sides are really maybe never going to get on the same page. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems like Ayuk's busting out all the stops to put pressure on the Niners.
Agree. It seems like it's kind of personal in a way that it never was. It was just business with Bosa. Rafael Flores says, y'all two are the best Niners YouTubers, BT dub. Thank you very much, Rafael. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you, man.
That's the end of the show. Let's go watch Game 5. Can't wait to see the Mavs get buried. Looking forward to it.
Will you watch Mavs Celtics or will you watch Giants Cubs from Wrigley?
I might flip back and forth.
Sometimes you'll go baseball, I noticed.
I might go back and forth. I might try a little basketball and lose interest. I want to watch and like basketball, but I lose interest quickly. It's the free throws. I'm sorry. The free throws are boring as hell.
I'm trying to look over the Rafael Flores. Is that a sharp cut?
What do you mean? Oh, these are cuts clothing, baby.
Yeah, am I looking at cuts there?
Cuts
underneath Rafael?
Oh yeah.
Look at you.
Oh yeah. That's right.
Look at you.
Gonna have it out in the links this weekend. It's really the ideal.
You got your own clothier. I mentioned it to my wife. I said, honey, Grant's got his own clothier. She's like, wow, he's really big time. I'm like,
like
that?
Yeah. You like that?
Oprah's
should I buy clothes or should I?
Oprah's wardrobe was brought to you by blankety blank on the loop. Check them out.
Hell yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone.